Noreen, we're gonna be busy visiting museums.
All right, calling our meeting to order, the March 15th Spokane Public Library Board. Do we have any observers, any comments? Susie, anything submitted?
There are no comments.
No comments, no observers. Move on to minutes from February. There are the open and closed minutes. Let's start with the closed minutes. Any edits? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, closed minutes are approved. How about the regular open minutes from February? Any changes, comments?
Nope.
Any motion to approve?
So motioned.
Second?
Second.
Noreen seconded, Michelle, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so minutes passed. Director's report.
Good evening, everyone. So I have a lot in here. I won't go through everything, but I'm happy to field any questions that you have about any of these topics. But obviously, the first one there is just something that you're aware of, the safety-related concerns that we had a couple weeks ago. And as I stated in my memo here, that we're taking steps, very strong steps to address kind of what we could do better. The end of it all was that people were safe that day, but it was something that obviously, whenever something like this happens, it makes you ask questions, examine protocols, examine security, systems. So we're doing all that. I want to assure you. And, so obviously, I also mentioned that later on in our staff day memo proposal, basically. But that day is something that we're planning some extensive trainings and drills. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I feel like I know that one of the things you're probably going to is a code so that people know without having to be blatantly, saying anything. But the one thing that we ran into a lot at school, particularly with drills, is we had a code. But if there are people in the building, and we will have people in the building, it's how, because the code doesn't quite work if you also are trying to keep people calm to move out. So I just wanted to bring that up because we got really hot to Trotsky's on codes. But then when it turned out there was a PTA meeting when they decided to try it, and there were like 1 million people like,
Obviously, that's the complication with our space like ours, which is the most public space that you can get, right? I mean, it's not like a school where the majority of the people in the building are, supposed to be there and might have received training and all that. It's not like a business office building, where again you have primarily workers and not a lot of guests. Here we have thousands of people who come through our doors every week. So we're looking at protocols, procedures that account for that, what you're pointing out, and also some security systems that may help us with communication and kind of quick action, so in the case of obviously something we never want to see, but in the case of like a weapons threat. So, but I appreciate all of your support. All of you reached out, that day or the day after, and it meant a lot. And obviously it was a little jarring for staff, very jarring for staff. But we're getting through it. I'm proud of the way our staff responded quickly, and the questions that arose from that situation have helped us. So, the third floor renovation update. So I've been having conversations with Laura. Leah's been involved with Andrew Berman, architect, and Shield Construction. They are, so where we are with that in a nutshell is they've gone through the design process. They have some new budget projections based on where we are at in the design right now. But there is still a desire to shave more costs off of the project because it's landing over what we actually projected maybe like 6 months ago or 8 months ago in the summer, right? And it's not a surprise because of rising costs, labor costs, material costs. And it's only gonna go higher and higher, obviously, like if the longer we delay a project like this, but we're trying to stick close to the figures that we gave the board this summer, so that we're honoring kind of that figure, and so we're looking at with them, ways to shave off certain cost elements. It's very hard at this point because the design is like really kind of tight, and we're getting close to the point where we're not going to be able to shave off any more costs outside of really changing the scope of the design and the nature of what we're gaining from the design, so it's a balancing act, I would say. As you all know, also I would want to mention that the restrooms were always going to be treated as something that we design and bid out, but treated as an alternate. So like a very real possibility that we might take that as and kind of shelve that maybe for a few years down the line, let's say, and so that's something that we're talking about and just kind of keeping in the back of our minds. So in May, we should have very like even better number projections or budget projections, more accurate projections, and more finely tuned design. And so I've asked AVA and SNC to be present, maybe on Zoom or in the building, for a discussion with the board in May, prior to when we expect to go out to bid in June. So a lot more updates coming for that project, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more detail in like where we are and what kind of discussions we're having. So it's been challenging because of, like I said, rising material costs and labor costs, obviously, which always will go up every year. So Blythe and I have been having discussions kind of relevant to this discussion of the renovation project. Blythe and I have also been having discussions all along the way of tracking our progress in terms of what we expect to be able to transfer over to the reserve fund in June. So, and we're totally on track with that. So we expect to make a large transfer over to the reserve fund, positioning us to be able to spend what we thought we would need back in the summer when we were first talking about this project. So that part is there. It's just that now the design and the actual projected construction costs, we're trying to kind of whittle it down to like a number that feels better for us. So just want to give you an update on that. Let's see. The legislative breakfast is something I wanted to highlight for the trustees. If you can make it, please do. Okay, great. This is, as I mentioned, I mean, has anyone ever been to an ILA legislative breakfast? I don't think, maybe Gene? Okay. Years ago, ILA used to have these breakfasts in Buffalo Grove, basically, and a lot of library trustees, directors, assistant directors, elected officials from different districts would come together in one big room, have breakfast. And
It's the one where it would snow every year.
exactly.
Right?
It was always
Yes.
on President's Day.
Yes, I remember.
Like clockwork, yeah, you're right. Like,
Yeah.
There was always like not just snow, it was like a full-on blizzard, basically.
Basically.
So it was horrible, but the event was good, and this year they're not going to do that. Maybe because of the snow, I don't know, but they finally wised up about that. But we decided that we want to have our own legislative breakfast and invite our local officials and their staff members. So we already have a good relationship with every single elected official in our area that serves our area. And we have relationships with their staff and everything in their offices. A lot of them come to the library regularly to have like those tables where they have constituency, like kind of assistance for the constituents. But we want to go a step beyond that, have them come in, maybe do a series of like very quick presentations about like highlighting some really exciting things that are happening in the library, give the trustees a chance to meet and kind of talk with some of the other elected officials in the community. So we think this is going to be a great event. We finally found a date thanks to Susie and Nancy Kim Phillips, our community engagement manager. So Friday, April 14th at 7:30 a.m. is when the breakfast will occur. And I believe it will be, is it the MR, Susie, or?
Yeah.
Okay, the MR. So please join us if you can. Obviously, you can just let me or Susie know.
For those of us that have to go to work, do you
Yeah.
mind if we leave early?
Oh, no, not at all.
That was gonna be my question too. I can be there for an hour. I can't
Yeah, me
the
too.
full
Oh,
hour and a half.
Absolutely,
That's okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And let us know, we'll factor that in, and we haven't set the schedule or agenda yet, so maybe we can kind of make sure that we get to some networking time before like the presentation. Yeah, the strategic plan, I haven't given you an update on our strategic planning process in quite a while. Like I mentioned in my report, we did have a delay. I'll take the blame for that. There was a lot happening towards the end of 2022 where it's not top priority on my plate, but we did pick it up in the new year. The committees, core committees work from the previous months during the year was all there to come back to all the community input that we received, the staff input. Shabnam and Noreen have been part of that process as well, so I want to thank them. We have a draft. I just shared it with the core committee, and we're waiting for comments there. And I expect to be able to bring the draft to the board at the April meeting, actually, not the May meeting. So hopefully the board will have a chance to look at it, possibly approve it in April. If not, and if you require more discussion, I'm hoping that we can have a plan in place by May. So, lastly, I just want to mention our longtime volunteer, Patricia Kretschmer, who passed away unfortunately earlier this year. And I shared a little article there that we had in her obituary.
That was nice.
She was a longtime volunteer, and the article even calls her like the library's first volunteer. I don't think that's actually technically true, because we have board members who are also volunteers, and we've had board members for many years, obviously. But Pat was the first when we started like a formal volunteering program, so that's why she claimed that title. And so she worked. I remember Pat. She very fondly. She worked. She volunteered a lot to help people in need, especially people who were homebound and couldn't get out of their homes and come to the library. She put together book bags and really took a lot of care in doing that. So just wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge her volunteering work. So.
Do we have any way of acknowledging those volunteers? Like, even if it were just in the newsletter, or something?
I don't know. It's been a while since we did it because of COVID, but in years past, before the pandemic, we had this wonderful volunteer luncheon.
Really wonderful, yeah.
And it was like we got all the volunteers together. The board members are volunteers, so board members were invited to participate. It was always such a really nice event. And I just had a conversation with Don, our volunteer coordinator, and about resurrecting that, now that people are getting together more. And so we were thinking about maybe possibly having something like late summer or something in the South Courtyard, possibly, maybe.
I was thinking more about sharing with the public.
Yeah, well, that too.
It's like we have these people who are coming in and doing this. This woman started doing this in 1986. Put her name on the door, man. I mean, I don't know, something.
We could do
just
that
something.
too.
I don't know what.
We could do that and have a volunteer luncheon.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's certainly not an either or. It's just, I was just trying to think about it, because you don't want to overshadow current volunteers, but by the same token, I just feel like people who have been that dedicated, the public needs to know they were that dedicated.
I totally agree.
And that can inspire other people to volunteer if they know that's a possibility at the library as well.
Yeah.
So any other questions about the director's report? Thank you.
All right, move on to disbursement report, pages 7 to 15. Any questions about disbursements?
Well,
Everybody's good?
It was,
I did have a question with the 7,000, the Village of Skokie for 120,000.
That's our repaving project.
Okay.
Yeah, we
repaving.
folded it to their larger repaving work, and that was honestly the huge savings for us. The projected cost, if you recall, was 580,000, based on our like building review a couple years ago. So, and that was obviously like a very conservative number. Like we, it would probably have been less than that anyway, but we saved a lot of money by. Very thankful to the village for helping us with that. So, yeah. Sure.
what does Associated Bag do for us? It's 60/60, the third one.
Associated Bag. Honestly, I don't recall that. Hold on a second. Oh, they're trash can liners.
Okay, I was wondering if it was that bag.
Bulk quantity, so.
Yeah, we should be
Very
good,
glamorous item.
we should be good for the decade
Yeah,
now.
exactly, yeah. That's why, probably why
I
I
don't know,
didn't,
we have a lot of trash cans.
probably why it wasn't familiar to me, because I don't see it very often.
Right, that's what.
I'll just bring up something I emailed Richard about on the side, and it kind of ties back to the director's report, just about how we're looking at sustainability at the library. I just feel, in talking to people in the community, sustainability is something that just keeps popping up, and people are very interested, invested in it. So I was looking at this disbursement report, and we order a lot of stuff from Amazon, so I was just very curious. Are all the orders done individually? Are we getting 1 million trucks here per day? Is everything done in a bulk shipment? Because all those little emissions can really add up. So it's little things like that I feel that can make a difference, provided it's not not causing any negative issues at the library, people being able to do their jobs. So you see a lot of those Amazon trucks around the neighborhood, but little steps like that can make a big difference with sustainability in the environment. So, and I think you were looking into that, just once again, not trying to make things more difficult for people, but if we're getting 20 shipments per day with trucks coming, could it be consolidated into just one shipment where everything's ordered together?
We've already, Blythe and
Marie.
Susie and Maria have already implemented some changes there, and yeah, like you said, it won't be for everything, because sometimes there has to be an urgent
Sure.
need for trash liners maybe, but everything else could be ordered, like in kind of like to consolidate it. Yeah. So I appreciate the comment, because it led to some efficiencies.
And, along those lines, I was thinking about that as I did see a lot of the Amazon purchases. Not that I don't love Amazon, but, I know that we really try to, even talking about like our meetings, for example, and patronizing our local vendors. If there were ways that there are things, because I know some of the things that we obviously order from Amazon are very unique to the library. But if there are other ways that we could be, getting back into our community and buying locally, I would love to see
We
that.
definitely try, with not only with products, but like contractors, vendors, we look to, that's a consideration. Sometimes it's not possible, but it's definitely something that we're always thinking.
The question around, around Conquest Pest Solutions, was that a maintenance issue, or did we get infected?
No, I don't recall any issue. I think it was probably just, I'm trying to find it. If I see it, I'll know.
It's under 60/60, and it's like mid-page.
Yeah, those are our regular service. So I think it was probably just 2 bills that came in, were paid out in 1 month.
Thank you.
Yep. Someone needs to knock on wood.
Other questions? Can I have a motion to approve disbursements? Oh, another question, Lori?
I told you I got notes.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I didn't put the number down, there's disbursements for continuing ed and membership. And this is just a general question in terms of how available is this available to non-administrative staff?
Of course.
So, okay, so that was, and some other time I'll come and ask you about that. I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
so, well, 100% yes. We send many of our staff, non-managers, non-administrators, to conferences, workshops, webinars, pay for travel, all that, so for sure.
So that it gets reflected in their employment record as well. As
We
we're,
keep
I mean,
records of all that, yeah.
yeah, because in terms of like looking at the, one of them plans we're working on that I can forget I'm not getting the name of. If we want people to be able to have some upward mobility,
Yeah.
then that becomes one of the mechanisms that has to be there to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we track training and continuing ed, and it's definitely part of that effort, and it will be moving forward. So that's a critical piece of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Other questions?
Going once,
Going
going twice.
Okay, I'll be,
Just keep going. The floor is yours.
Just to cross it off before going on the next one.
I'll cross those two off. But I just want to know, is Midwest Tape audiobooks?
Midwest Tape is a number of things. It can be AV, but it's also the company that does Hoopla, you know, the app for streaming content. So
Which one?
it's called Hoopla. It's one of our
So the-
streaming services. Yeah, for movies, music,
Like Canopy,
audiobooks.
Canopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
It looks like this.
I didn't know.
Team will give you a demonstration.
Okay. Okay, because I thought we only had Canopy, that's why.
No, we have, we have Overdrive for audiobooks.
Right, I have Overdrive.
Yeah.
I had that on the thing.
Yeah, we'll show you during a break, we'll get that
Right,
downloaded.
I need some instruction.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're gonna
You'll
love
love it. It was great.
I know, this is very exciting. I'm serious.
I'm serious too. It was great. All of these resources are fabulous. We're very fortunate.
We good?
Yeah, we have to move on so I can get to the next part of my list. Move it out, Richard.
Great question, about Hoopla. We've talked about this in prior meetings, that not everybody knows about all these resources. That's why I've asked a couple of times, in the newsletter, can we just have some spotlighting of these amazing resources?
And we have, and we will continue, and we always need more. It's an ongoing effort.
Ongoing, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's exciting to tell someone new about Hoopla or Canopy or something else.
So many great things, yeah.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the disbursement report?
So motioned.
Second?
Second.
And since it's money, we have to vote individually, so Shabna?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes, that passes 6-0. All right, on to consent agenda, starting page 16 through 32. Which includes financial statements, reports, circulation stats, etc. Questions, comments?
We're only going to which page?
Up to 32.
Oh, great, yes, I do. I do have a question, and it's page 28. And that's where we're just giving the statistics on, programs and how they was blah, blah, blah. And I was wondering if there wasn't some way to have as like an attachment or an addendum to that, the actual names of these things, as opposed to, to just give us a better sense of what kind of stuff had the biggest audience, as well as what form it took. It would be interesting to know the content.
I actually have been, what we're planning to start in May, and let me know if this kind of will help with the request, is to have a bit of a narrative report from our learning experiences manager highlighting the kind of standout things from the past month, but also giving a preview of what's coming up. I want to give credit to Gina. I think Gina also helped me suggest that idea, and I think that was that would be really helpful, and maybe that will be actually even more helpful than kind of just a long spreadsheet of programs, but like to really call out like kind of notable things with the kind of like the most popular programs listed
And that may be what you ultimately decide, you know, is the best way to go, and I wouldn't object to that. It's just that I think being able to see it, you know, I'd like to see I'd like to see them all individually, but depending on how you, you know, it'll depend on how you guys work it out, but having the narrative will be better.
We'll bring something to you in May. We're gonna kind of tighten up the reports in general and reformat them a little bit to kind of create some more consistency, and we'll include that in the next iteration of reports.
I'm thrilled to see the amount of kids program. I mean, just the sheer number of kids coming in. I mean, I know last year, obviously, number was slightly lower because of COVID and whatnot, but I mean, that's huge. I mean, an increase of almost like 186%. I mean, that's major. So I just love seeing in the newsletter too, the early childhood development stuff. So that was absolutely fantastic to see it all come together like this. So it's not surprising to me that people are really enjoying that type of programming for their kids.
Absolutely, I agree. It's always really, it's so heartwarming to see kids in the building and just people in general, but especially when you have like groups of kids coming, full youth room, kids room.
At page 26, I was noted, nice to see gate count is up over 100,000 from last year. Checked out items are up over 100,000 from last year. Still not to the 2019, 2020 levels, but we're 100,000 is a good.
We're definitely on the right trajectory. Like, I'm a little impatient with that, you know, so I want to see those numbers like back to 100% and beyond, obviously, but I'm taking a little bit of like comfort in knowing that we're not the only ones who are not fully back, you know, in terms of the numbers. Like, nationwide, actually, we're seeing other libraries share their data, and it's eerie how similar the numbers look. You know, like a lot of libraries in that 60% rate in terms of like gate count, as opposed to like 80, 90, 100.
Do you think that part of it could be offset because of so much has gone digital now?
I mean, that some of that, I mean, it's hard to say, you know, it would just be kind of like, I think it would be a lot of analysis, I mean, but that's part of it. Some people during the pandemic just kind of discovered streaming. Maybe they only came in before physically, right? You know, so maybe that's it. Some people, I mean, I hate to sound morbid, but I think just the population of library users may have changed because of illness or that, you know, over the past 3 years, you know. We're certainly seeing, like, just eyeballing it, like, if you come into the library and you look at the second floor and you look at the kids area, and you look at the teens area, and you look at people studying and hanging out in the cafe, it feels like we're at 100% and beyond for pre-pandemic levels. So it's a bit of a, like, still a mystery, like, where is that coming from? Well, why aren't we seeing the gate count return to full levels?
We're not full at the toddler age? Because I come in here, you can't even, you have to like swim through those kids. They are just all over.
I know, that's what I mean, but I think it also just goes to show, I mean, our gate count pre-pandemic was like exceptional, you know, like we were not a normal public library, you know, and so that's like kind of, it's almost unfair to judge ourselves by those standards, honestly, but that those are the standards we have, expectations we have for ourselves, that's just a fact. So we're trying to figure out like what we need to do to get back to those levels, and not because the numbers are the only thing. That's not it for me. It's really about the thought that there might be people in the community who are not using our library and taking advantage of our services and using us as a resource. That's what it's all about, and the numbers are a reflection of that. So it's not about like, I never want to get stuck on just like pure numbers and CERC stats and all that, because it doesn't tell the whole story. But it's a part of the story, right? So.
Has there ever been,
I'm just agreeing, and I also think societally, I don't think that the library sector is alone. I
Right.
think there's many other public places that people frequented before the pandemic that people are still taking their time, and I'm hoping that soon enough, right, we're seeing numbers go up, and I think they'll continue to go up as people get more and more comfortable re-entering sort of their normal activities.
Yeah, have we ever looked at kind of like analyzed between programming, like differences pre-pandemic versus current, and how maybe are there things that we used to offer that we're no longer offering, or have we gone in a completely different direction in certain demographics? I just wonder if we looked at kind of a side-by-side comparison, because as you say, right, pre-pandemic, our numbers were unusually high, which means, in comparison to surrounding libraries, which I think just speaks to the wonderful things that we have to offer here. And I think it is fair almost to compare to a certain degree, right, pre-pandemic versus post. So I'm just wondering if we've ever done anything programming-wise to look at the differences between those and see where maybe we might have, shifted in one way, and maybe we need to shift back, or we need to be thinking about that in another way, in order to reach some demographics that maybe we're not currently.
Yeah, I think these are all excellent points, and I would say that our staff have done that to a degree, but a lot more has to be done in that regard. And just a little preview of like the strategic plan. One of the things that we really want to focus is on kind of really paying attention to our core public services, analyzing it, enhancing it, promoting it. So like that, what you just said really ties well into one of the things that I think our staff and our community want moving forward. So it's going to be like this. The next 3 years, I feel like is going to be a lot of that. Just like reflecting, understanding, examining, and then adapting.
And I know that, just in my own personal work and professional work, when I think about diversity and equity, right, and inclusion, one of the things that is a concept that kind of comes up in many of the conversations that I've been having is about understanding our demographics. And I know that we've done before some demographic studies, but I'm wondering if, and I don't know when the last time was, but maybe there might be a way to do a little bit more digging of that, to really talk about more of the traditions, culture, things, religious holidays, things like that, that maybe that we can continue to dive deeper in so that we can be creating services around our exact population, for our patients here.
I agree with everything you just said, 100%, and it will definitely be part of our discussion, and is already, but moving forward, it needs to be a stronger part of our analysis of what we do. Yeah, sure.
I'll just say too, I just did some quick math over here. I'm encouraged by the numbers, even though like gate count is, still not at the levels. I like to call it the attachment rate. When you look at the overall amount of materials that are circulating based off of the number of people that are coming in, the people that are coming in are checking out more materials. That ratio is higher, and it's significantly higher, like 33%. So that to me says the people that are coming in are more engaged now than they were even at our highest levels in fiscal 18. So to me, that's a very positive trend. The more and more the gate count goes up, if this level of engagement stays, I mean, that's incredible. So I think that speaks a lot, once again, to the remodel, how people are interacting with the materials and finding what they need. So
You're spot on.
I see the sunshine here, like that, it's a very good thing, I mean, that's a very good attach rate, you know.
And we do
to go
too.
up.
That's very early on after the renovation, after we started opening normal, hours, normal, you know, kind of normal, in a normal way. We were really early on encouraged by those circulation numbers that you're talking about, because we noticed there is just really, like you said, heavy engagement, and especially like our youth materials, it's just really doing well.
And just wait till Noreen downloads Hoopla.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Look, I had a friend that came up to me, she said, "Do you know you can get free downloadable books at the library?" I said, "Yes, I do." You know?
It starts
She's like,
here.
"Why am I buying these things?" I said, "I don't know. I mean, just rent, you know." It was just funny because she's a very avid reader. She had
Well, the part of the board's duty is to be an ambassador of the
no,
library.
we are advocating. Yes, yes.
All right, other questions about consent agenda?
Well, no, that's not the consent, it's not in the consent agenda.
Not consent agenda. All right, motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved?
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Okay.
Hi.
Any opposed? That passes 6-1. All right, then let's move on to, so we need to talk about the approval of the chiller replacement bid, starting page 33 through 50, and we have a guest with us who can explain some of the technical aspects. Richard, do you want to?
Oh, good.
Yes, Andrew Melville is our project manager from Groen Buckus, and he's been really helpful to Andy Garcia, our building services manager, and myself to understand the scope of the project, bid out the project, design the project, and really kind of assess and analyze the bid results. So you have a memo, and from me, you know, kind of just with a very kind of brief summary of what is being asked of the board. But you also have attached to that a memo, a lengthier memo from Andrew explaining a lot of the technical aspects of the project and kind of getting into more detail about what we're asking of the board in terms of the alternates and the additional cost for commissioning. And so I just wanted to make sure that the board has an opportunity. If you have any questions that I can't answer, Andrew is here to talk about it. If not, that's fine too, but we just wanted him to be on hand.
I actually do have a question, and it's the commissioning. And I understand about the understand is a bit of an overstatement, but it's clear. But the commissioning is not clear. I'm not sure what what our end result of that commissioning is, and how that's related to, if we're just putting in new equipment, how is that put in without having all this testing? You know what I'm saying? So I would like to understand that, the connection, why we need, not so much why we need, I mean, they indicate it's setting up protocols for testing ongoing, I think, but I'd just like to be clear.
Well, I appreciate that question, and just to let you know, I asked the exact same question, and Andrew explained it to me. But Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks for being here. Did you hear Noreen's question about trying to understand a little bit about the benefits and the purpose of the commissioning process?
Yeah. So it's difficult to put it simply, so I'll try my best here. In a typical project, us as the design engineer, during construction, we have a scope of work where we essentially oversee what the contractor's doing, reviewing their equipment purchases. They provide us submittals showing us the equipment that they're buying and for us to approve that it meets the specifications and drawings. And we do site surveys to confirm that what they're installing is what we have designed and specified. But this typical scope of work as a design engineer is just that high-level site surveys and general observation of the new equipment in operation. Commissioning is a much more detailed testing process to make sure to test all the functions of all the new equipment being put in, that it is not included in a typical design engineer's contract. It was not initially included, or was not included in our contract. And it's really going through each piece of equipment and making sure that developing a procedure of testing every single function and communication to the building automation system, which is the brains behind your building system that tells everything how to operate, to make sure that everything is operating as it should. I think that as compared to the general overview that a typical construction administration scope that us as a design engineer does, we rely on the contractor to be doing everything correctly and not doing detailed checks that, okay, this valve that we put in is from the outside, it looks like it's wired correctly. And right now on this day that I'm visiting, it's functioning as it should. But then what commissioning does is they come in and they simulate different operating time periods to say, okay, this looks like it's going to be working then. There's no crisscross of wiring or anything like that, to really get these detailed testing procedures. So that's just kind of how our industry works, where the design engineer doesn't get into that detailed level of testing in their typical contracts. And you certainly can not do the commissioning here. It's just that then you run the risk that, okay, we installed it, us as a design engineer, looks like everything's installed and everything's proved. Then comes the hottest day of the year and something doesn't work because, the project has been closed out before the hottest day of the year. Just like as a very high level example that where if you're commissioning, maybe you would have simulated operating at the hottest day of the year. In fact, commissioning contracts often, and I believe ours should, include coming back during peak periods to make sure that everything is operating. Not to say that if something's not operating correctly, that we will always be there to answer questions and take a look and see if there was something that was wrong at the time. But commissioning kind of goes through this testing process to kind of get out ahead of that and identify all issues before they pop up. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, that helped me anyway. The other question that I have about it is the calendar, because one point is to do this work so that we're ready for warmer weather and when we'll need the cooling. But then the contract states that it could go on until 3/29/24. So I wanted to, I was questioning that.
It wouldn't
Right,
be for
or,
this information for this summer, just to be clear.
You're into 24.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind. I was in 23, I was like, how could that be?
Yeah, just to be clear, that wasn't any delay or caused by the consultant or anything. That we knew when we were hiring Rowan Buckus to design a solution that we were targeting 2024's cooling season.
No, understood, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a commissioning question as well. Under Exhibit B, when you're listing the prices for the commission work, everything is more or less a set cost except for commissioning project software. Says it's $100 a month. Is this going to be an ongoing cost to us that'll continue after the commission?
No, that should not be an ongoing cost for you guys. I think that may have been some standard language included for larger, more involved commissioning projects. But I do not believe that would be any ongoing cost for you guys.
I don't know how you have it in front of you, but for us, you have your document production, travel, then commissioning project software, and it says that's $100 a month.
I'm sorry, yeah, that Exhibit B is a generic expenses form for us, and that would not apply to this project. I believe in the proposal that Exhibit B is only referenced as any, if there's any additional services, here's is what we would bid for. Or am I thinking of, I apologize, I don't have the proposal open right in front of me. I can get it, take a look.
But just to be clear, Andrew, kind of related to what Gene's asking, the cost of the commissioning is $9,700 period, and there's no ongoing
Correct.
costs. That's what my understanding is for the contractors too.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, because I know you and I emailed about it, the main benefits of the magnetic bearing chiller are that it's quieter and that you don't have to have this regular maintenance with having to lubricate it with oil. So that helps to save expenses, and it's a little bit easier to maintain, right?
That's my understanding from Andrew.
Okay,
Yes, that is correct.
that was good.
Yeah, right. Well, and keep in mind that, I don't know how many, I can't remember if you all had a tour of the mechanical room in the second floor, but if you do, I'm happy to do that. But the chiller is behind, like these walls right here, you know, so we would benefit from a quieter machine.
Cool.
All right, so the recommendation, so there's several steps here. So the recommendation is we include commissioning, we do the magnetic, not the old version, and that we replace 2 pumps, not all 6 pumps, because each of those are different costs.
Right, and I spelled it out in my memo at a total of $809,600.
Right, so page 34, it would be the second projected cost of $809,600, not the initial.
That would be my recommendation. We wanted to put all 6 pricing on there in case the board really feels strongly about just taking care of all this all at once. But I asked Andrew I can't remember if I put in the proposal, but part of the memo, but I did ask Andrew if we were to only replace 2 pumps that are more, that are older right now, and later on, let's say in the next 5 years, replace the other 4, would it be difficult? Would it be especially costly because of it would be kind of disruptive or anything? He said that it would be a very simple process, so
And
that's
you think
why
we might get like up to 8 years out of those other pumps then?
I mean, that according to their average lifespan, but we don't know, obviously.
Right, but just
Possible.
average lifespan, another 8 years people in.
Right.
One other thing to consider is that you have 3 of each type of pumps there. Each chiller only needs 1 pump to operate, so you have a backup of each pump. And so that kind of plays into when you're talking about pump longevity, is that you have that backup if something does happen. You know, if you're running these pumps, you're not replacing these pumps, they're still operating well, and you're past the design life, they're still operating well. They're not both gonna, more than likely, not both gonna fail at the same, all of them gonna fail at the same time. So you do have that backup as well.
And even if the other 4 do fail at the same time, worst case scenario, by having these 2 new pumps, we'd be pretty much guaranteeing ourselves stability in that regard, right?
Right, correct.
Other questions?
I have a question, just regarding the finance piece of it. So even though, if and when we approve it for tonight, and the work isn't going to go until fiscal year 24,
That's right.
correct? So then if and when, I'm just trying to think of if we have that money set aside in order to cover this, because I'm thinking in my head, kind of big picture,
Sure,
right?
sure.
We've got the 3rd floor renovation and talking about that. So just making sure that this is going to be something that we have the funds for, in addition to all the other things that we had planned. This is It's a big jump.
Definitely factored into our long-term projections and short-term projections. Yeah, for sure. We are confident that we have the funds to pay for this.
When we initially talked about this, looking at the reserves, keeping the 5-month minimum, it looked like we could do the coolers and the third floor renovations, depending on how the bids come in. We could do all that and still maintain the 5-month reserve. So it's in reserve, not in the annual budget, so should all be there. Other questions, comments?
And I just want to be very clear about what I presented in the memo and what Andrew went into more detail in his memo. The rebates are factored into this calculation, so the initial cost will be $82,500 higher, but then according to Andrew, after the completion of the process, we should recoup that amount. So that, I just want to be clear about that.
How long does it typically take to get a rebate back on this type of project?
Andrew, do you know? Did you hear that? How long it takes typically
Yeah.
to get a rebate back from ComEd?
I believe it's relatively quickly. It has to be, it's on the order of months after a project is fully complete. So we have to show ComEd, give them proof that everything's been installed like we said they are, and then at that time they will get the rebate to you, which like I said, I believe it's a few months, maybe sooner.
I just didn't want it to be, a year later, we're waiting for this rebate and we're looking at our budget and all that.
We won't forget. Life won't forget.
I just noticed, I wrote it down already.
Where's my money?
Exactly.
I mean, how many times have we
And
bought
on the
rebate,
On the rebates, I want to be clear that they have not been approved yet. Once you guys approve the budget and we decide or which chiller we want to go with, then we'll submit an application and go through an approval process. There's no reason why it shouldn't be approved, but those are anticipated rebate values that we've provided so far.
But I think realistically, you're looking at a cost of, almost $900,000, while $82,500 is a substantial rebate. The total cost of the project is substantially more than the rebate amount. So I know we have that analysis done, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's a big ticket item.
yes, of course.
Other questions? All right, then we're looking at page 34. Can I have a motion to approve chiller replacement at the projected cost of $809,600?
I'll do it.
Mary makes the motion, and second.
I'll second.
All right, again, we have to vote individually since it's spending. Shabna?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes. Like what?
Mira?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And yes, also. That passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for being here.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Can I
Any
talk to
other
you
questions?
about-
I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you.
Then moving on to the request for staff day closure.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clearly
Does
stated
he
in
know? No.
my memo. We would like to close the library on Friday, May 12th, in order to do focus primarily on safety training for staff and drills and all of that hasn't been designed yet. The day hasn't been designed yet, but we already have ideas. Leah is actually the person who designed all of our staff days for the past 5 years or so, with the exception of one of them, I think. So the most recent one. So we have someone on staff who can really do a great job with that. So and if you recall, at last October when we had our most recent staff day, I had mentioned that due to the kind of experience of the pandemic, it felt really good to have our staff, and it was a really meaningful time to just connect and like build a sense of team And that I thought that maybe it would be a good idea to do it in the spring as well. And so we didn't have plans, but this actually makes a lot of sense. After the incident, we were like, yeah, we have to do this. And so I hope that the board agrees. I'm happy to answer any questions.
The only question that I have about it is, I'm just thinking about the school calendar
Sure.
and whether that is right in the middle of somebody's finals thing or whatever, where the kids are really, because the pandemic was one of the big issues about they're so used to wanting to study here and they couldn't study here, and it was, so that's the only question that I have about the date is just, is it gonna create an issue, or do we get it out there in time to let?
I think that's the key. It's always, anytime we close the library, as you know, like it's going to be disruptive to some degree, to someone, and our strategy has always been to really get ahead of it, get the word out, give people a chance to prepare for it,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and we could definitely try to minimize.
When do the schools
Yes.
close? When are they?
That's not, they're still in May.
That's what I thought, right?
But the other part of that, as you do the advance announcement thing, is to, maybe if there's some way that we can remind kids that there's research sources and stuff that you need, this is a day you're not gonna be able to get it here, you can get it online, you can get it,
Right.
to give them some alternatives as well,
Right.
as opposed to just plan around us.
Richard, is there any reason not to be able to delay the staff day a couple of weeks till kids are out of school?
Well, the only thing is, in June, we start summer reading, and that's like prime time for families, kids coming into the library. I hate to close the library for right after the start of summer reading. So like I said, there's really not a good time, honestly. It's like the best time that we saw. We looked at our events calendar, that's already in place for me, and that was a day where we only had one event, it was like a movie, and we were able to reschedule it, so.
Yeah, not to be repetitive, it's just, if we give those reminders, I think
We
it'll
will
help.
definitely, we will do everything we can.
When we do a training day, I know the training is 9 to 5.
Yes.
So we open in the evening then when the training day is over, because the evening staff comes in, we don't.
It's really hard to
No,
do that
that's it.
because we
Shut the
ask
whole thing down.
all
People
the
are
staff to
tired.
start at 9, and then that creates like split shifts potentially and all that, or 9 days, and that's hard, yeah.
Richard, just curious, what does the security training look like? Like, to bring in police or
Yeah,
fire?
well, we haven't designed it completely, but that's exactly what we're thinking. Probably like we'll bring in either consultants or the police. We'll definitely call the police to invite them and work with them to understand what the training should look like, but yeah, for sure.
We had a question too. When do we typically have staff training days?
It's
When do we have an annual one?
Yeah, I mean, over the recent years, it's kind of like changed a little bit. I mean, we used to have them in January, February-ish, like kind of early in the calendar year, and then right before the construction project, 2020, January 2020 started, we knew we weren't going to be able to have a staff day, so we had a staff day, I believe, in November 2019. And then during the pandemic, obviously all of us were off and we didn't have staff days. We had a staff day in October, so like it just kind of been got all messed up because of the renovation and pandemic. Typically, they've been in January.
My other question is, I know that the safety trainings, I am a huge supporter of making sure that, the safety protocols and things like that, that our staff have the support and the practice for situations that may arise, and I want them to feel that they have the tools and supports necessary in case of an emergency. So I know that that's going to be a big portion of it. What will happen outside of that? And then my question is that going to be the whole day, or are you going to have other activities planned And then my other question would be, which kind of folds into that, is if the staff members have any voice or feedback about how their time is utilized on these staff training days.
We have a lot of conversations with staff, before, and there's usually like a committee that works made up of people from different departments and representatives of the library as a whole. The day is usually, like there's not a lot of food, it's like, it's a lot of like team building, kind of like camaraderie building, like opportunities for building connections with one another. Just like even being able to know that someone else that you haven't really worked with the same shifts, like works at the library, is a powerful thing that we've seen, and I don't know, one of the things that we want to do also is possibly take advantage of that day to do kind of whatever training or education or prep is needed for a potential CBA transition, like the bargaining agreement transition, like including managers, supervisors especially. So again, I don't want to get too far into this because we haven't designed the day, but there are a lot of different things that are possible, so. Yeah, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah. So historically, we always do evaluations after staff day, and we get an idea of what went well, what would people like to see next time, and also what is the purpose of these kinds of days. And generally, pretty consistently in the 5.5 years that I designed the days, people wanted to learn something new and to connect to their coworkers. So it's a lot about connection, which makes a lot of sense. And sometimes, like Richard said, someone works only evenings, they get to overlap with the person who only works mornings. It can be really good for morale, but also for productivity too. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, to learn and also to kind of feel more confident about processes. Thank you.
Questions, comments, observation? A motion to approve the staff day closure?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Very good. All right, and last is Rails. We're not going to go through it. In fact, I think Richard was suggesting going forward, we may just put this in a separate file and not have to have this discussion every month. So it will always be available, but you can just look at it as needed, as opposed to tagging it on several pages and taking up a couple minutes. Shabnam, that's okay?
Bless you.
You do such an incredible job, Shabnam, really, really, it's
All right,
amazing.
so take a look. It's the last time we put on the regular monthly agenda. It will still be available with all the material that's sent out in your folders. All right, I get a motion to go into closed session in order to discuss collective bargaining.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.